All right, now that we've gotten the model, we've done the shell and the core, and we've got most of the model created, let's dive into how we're going to start editing the walls. If you remembered from my lecture, walls are what's called a system type family. So they're a family, but they're just a built-in family, and there's only a limited amount of things we can change about the walls. So we're going to go into that right now. So I'm going to reset my temporary hide, and I'm going to actually close my 3D view so that all we're looking at is the main floor plan, is all I want. And we're going to start changing the attributes of the wall. So if you remember, let's go to the south elevation real quick. Our walls look pretty plain on the outside, but do you see how our example has like two different sides of, it's got like horizontal lap siding, and then it's got vertical board and batten siding. And then there's even a little brick on the chimney. We're not going to bother with the chimney for this exercise, but you'll notice there's different material types on the exterior of the wall. So we would like our exterior walls to match that. The other thing our walls are missing is you can see they're one solid object, but walls in the real world aren't one solid object. They're layers, right? There's 2x4s, there's a sheetrock on the inside, and then on the outside there'd be brick or hardy board or whatever. And so we'd want to put those layers in because we also want to make sure our walls are the correct thickness because it makes a difference in our layout. So in order to do that, we're going to edit the wall family. And because it's a system family, the settings are kind of a little bit hidden. So you remember if you click on the wall, we can go up here and we can change the type of wall. You remember this drop down where you pick your wall type? We could change this 4-inch wall to a 6-inch wall if we wanted to, right? And you can see it changed thickness. We're going to change it back to a 4-inch wall. So you can change the wall type, and you can change where its top and bottom constraints are and its location line. We talked about all that, but how do you change its layers? So in order to do that, you have to create a new type of wall family. So if you remember the lecture, there's a hierarchy. There's the category. So all of these walls are in the category of wall type, or wall, that's the category. Then there's the actual family. So if I click on the wall, what's up here in the properties panel, the top portion is the type of family that it is. So it's a basic wall family. So again, this is a system family that's categorized as a wall, and the name of the family is basic wall. And then the type of family, which is the next hierarchy, is the type. The type is a generic 4-inch wall. This is what we need to change. We need to duplicate this wall and then make a new type of basic wall. And then once we do that, we'll start to get in, we'll be able to have what we need. Because right now, all you're able to do is pick from whatever wall types are already in the template file that someone else created. And maybe you can find the right wall type that's going to work for you. But I don't see it right now. So we're going to make it. Well, I actually do see one that will probably be pretty close. It's this 4.5-inch partition wall is probably what we're going to end up recreating. But I want to recreate it with you so that you understand how to do it. So we're going to start on a wall that's similar to what we want to create. A 4-inch wall is close to what an actual wall will be. So in your mind, before we start editing the wall, let's talk about what the wall should be. In residential construction, the typical interior wall that's not load-bearing is a 2x4 stud, a layer of 2x4 studs, which you've seen wall framing, and then they put sheetrock on either side. So let's build that in Revit. So let's click on our wall. And the way you edit a system family is you go over here and there's this little button called Edit Type. And you click Edit Type and it opens up a brand new dialog box with a lot of settings, most of which you don't really need to worry about. In fact, everything in this lower half is probably not going to have any concern for you. the one that we really care about is this structure column. And you hit edit and it brings up yet another dialog box. And to help see what we're doing in this dialog box, it's good to hit this preview button. And so this is showing our wall in plan view. If you look down here, there's this little button that says floor plan, or you can look at it in section. So let's keep it in floor plan for now. And the way you're going to read and use this dialog box is you have to think of the top of the dialog box. Pretend like you're looking at the wall in floor plan, just like over here on the preview. And the top of this area is the exterior side of the wall, and the bottom is the interior side. So right now, you can see all that's in here is really nothing. It's a layer. There's one layer right here. You can see the core boundary. The core boundary is meant to help distinguish what part of the wall is structural and could be load-bearing, and what part is just finishes. So right now, inside the core for structure, they've just got a generic material called structure. So this function. So this first column tells you what the layer functions as. So right now it's the structure of the wall. The next column is the material, and right now they haven't even put a material in, so it's nothing. And then you tell it the thickness of the layer right here. The others are not important yet. When you get into advanced modeling in Revit, you could probably use these other settings, but for now we'll leave them the way they are. So this is how the current 4-inch wall is set up. And we don't want it like that. We want it to change. But before we do that, we want to duplicate the wall. So I'm going to cancel back out, and I'm going to cancel back out. So we're back into our normal environment. We're going to click the wall again, and we're going to hit edit type. And before we do anything, what we want to do is hit duplicate. Before we want to start changing the wall, we want to duplicate it. So hit duplicate, and it will copy the wall type for you. And then you just need to rename it. So we're going to name this, you can literally name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it interior hyphen 2x4 with gyp on 2 sides. I like to be descriptive with mine so that I know what the wall is like, but you can name it whatever you want. You could just name it normal interior wall. So that's what I'm going to name it. And now that we've duplicated it, so if you click this drop-down list, here are all the types that were already there. And you can see the generic 4-inch wall is there, but also your interior 2x4 with gyp on 2 sides, it's also there. So you got to make sure you've selected the type that you want. Again, the family is basic wall, and we're just editing the type. So it's gyp on 2 sides. Okay, so once you've duplicated it, now you can edit it. So we're going to go back in here, and we're going to change the core, the structural portion of this wall. We're going to change it to a 3x4 or a 2x4 stud. So a 2x4 is not actually 2 inches by 4 inches like you would think. It's a 1/2 inch smaller in each direction. There's no way you would really know that unless you looked it up or unless you've done a lot of design. So if you've seen a house, you know how they stand. You know, the long ways is, anyways, I think you know what I'm saying. The point is the wide part of the stud is the depth of the wall. So we're going to use 3.5 inches. So 3.5 inches is how big the core is going to be. Now we need to add more layers. We need to add 2 more layers. So I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to hit the insert button twice. And do you see how it inserted these 2 layers? So now we want to move them into the right location. So there's going to be 1 layer on both sides of our stud wall. So if I highlight the row I want to move, I can come down here and I can move it down or up. So I'm going to move it down, and I'm going to move it outside the core boundary. because gypboard or sheetrock is not a structural element. So we're going to take it outside of the core boundary. And then same with this layer, we're going to move it up till it's outside of the core boundary. We're going to change its function from structure to finish. And we're going to put finish 1 on both sides because it's the same finish on both sides. All right, we're also going to give it a dimension. Sheetrock comes in a couple different dimensions. I'm just going to use 1/2 inch. So we're going to put 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here. And you see when we add a dimension how our wall changes? So now you can see the gypsum board, the 2x4 layer, and then the other gyp board layer. Now all we need to do is pick the materials. So we haven't talked about materials yet, and we're going to talk more about it when we do the exterior walls. But for now, let's click inside the material, and there's this little box that appears. You click it, and it's going to open up the materials dialog box. So these are all the materials that are already loaded into your project. And again, there might be none or there might be a ton depending on whose template you're using. Since we're using the Autodesk default template, we're just going to try to find a material that works. So let's type in stud. Oh no, sorry, we're actually picking gypboard. So let's see if we can find gypboard. Yep, there's already gypsum in here. So let's click on that material and we'll click OK. We won't worry about the rest of the settings just yet because we're not ready. First, you need to kind of learn this element. So we've picked gyp wallboard. We need to do the same thing for the other side. So it remembers what we selected last. So gypsum wallboard. Now we need to pick the stud layer. So let's click a material and let's type in stud. And they only have a metal stud layer, which I don't particularly like. Let's do 2x4. Let's see if they have that. No, let's say wood. There's wood joist layer, structure wood joist rafter layer, bat insulation. Let's just do softwood lumber for now. That can be the material, and we'll click OK. And now you can see our wall has a fill pattern for the studs and a different pattern for the sheetrock. So now we've made our wall. So we'll click OK. And that brings us back to this area, and we'll click OK again. And now it doesn't look like much changed. And that is because right now our view is not set to show the layers. So if we go down here to our view settings, there's a little setting called the detail level. And right now it's set to the coarse level. If you click there and you click fine, it then starts to show the layers of the wall. So now you can see our wall has layers. And now you can see all the other walls that don't have layers because they're still that old 4-inch wall. So now what you want to do is you want to change all of these to this wall type. So you can do this a couple ways. I'll show you 2 ways. You can control click to select multiple walls. So I'm just going to click my interior walls, and I can go over here and I can click and it'll drop down, and I can pick my interior wall. So if you remember, it's interior 2x4 with gyp on 2 sides. Let's click that button. And now it changed all of those to that type of wall. The other method you can use is you can go up to the Modify tab, and there's a little icon here that's called Match Type Properties. So if you click this button, it gives you a little paintbrush icon. Do you see how it's a paintbrush? And you first click on the wall you want to copy. You want to fill your brush with the type parameters that you just adjusted, right? So we just changed the wall type. We changed all those settings. So we want to copy those into the paintbrush, and then we want to paint them onto the walls that are not that type. So watch what happens. I'll pick the wall that's correct, I click once and you see how the paintbrush went black? It's like you filled the paintbrush. And now you want to paint it onto these other walls. You want to take those parameters and add them to these walls and change it. So you click those walls and now they'll change to match. Okay, so those are the two methods. And now if you click these walls, you can see they've been changed to this type of wall. Okay, so now your interior walls are correct. Let's talk about exterior walls. We're gonna go quicker because we've done this once. So let's click an exterior wall. We're gonna edit its type. We're gonna duplicate it, and we'll call this exterior wall with, let's do this with siding. Let's do lap siding. Okay, so we'll click OK. And now that we have a new wall type, we'll come down and we'll edit its structure. So again, we just have a 6-inch generic wall. So let's think about the layers we want to add. On the inside of the wall, and remember the bottom of this panel is the inside and the exterior side is the top. Remember we want to add chipboard there. So let's insert one layer and let's move it down to the outside of the wall. That'll be our chipboard. So chipboard's 1/2 inch. So let's put in 1/2 inch. Also, you might be happy to know, you can type in fractions. So if I do 1 and then do the backslash and 2 to do 1/2, and then I put the inch in, it will also accept fractions of inches if you want to put it in that way rather than putting numerical. Like 0.5 inches is, sometimes it's easier. Like if you're doing 1/16, I don't know what the numerical value of 1/16 is. So I type 1/16 and then I hit the inches and it knows to do 1/6 or 1/16. So just so you know, you can add fractions in that way. All right, so let's pick chipboard. We'll search the materials here for chipboard. Click that and click OK. Let's put our structure in. That was, I believe that was softwood. Let's go back to wood. Softwood lumber. We'll click OK. And we need to change our chipboard to finish 1. All right, now we need to add our exterior material. So let's insert another material and let's move it up into the correct position. So we're moving it to the exterior side because this will be our exterior finish. Now it's up to you how many layers you want to add. Because I'm an architect, I add all of the layers that you're going to need. So technically, if you're going to put siding on an exterior wall, the first thing you put on the exterior side after the lumber is you put plywood, right? OSB or whatever. We call it sheathing. But basically it's those big pieces of wood that are 4 feet by 8 wide. And then sometimes it's 5/8 inch thick. We're just going to call it 1/2 inch thick. So I'm going to put 0.5 inches. It's not structure. We're going to call it a substrate is its function. And then let's see if we have, I don't know if it has a sheathing. Yeah, plywood sheathing. So let's click that and click OK. And then let's put on the last layer. Technically, you can also put in the weather barrier. You can put in, on brick, there's technically an air gap between the brick and the stud wall. It's up to you to figure out how it's assembled. For us, we're just trying to get the wall to kind of look right on the outside. So we're going to insert one more layer, and this is going to be the outside finish. So we're going to call it finish 2. And siding, I don't know, depending on what product you're using, it varies, but we'll just say it's another 1/2 inch of siding. So that adds another layer. And now we need to pick the material. So let's just see if there's siding already built in. And yeah, they do have a siding. And it's, okay, we'll click OK. And there we go. So now let's see what that did. We just changed the one wall. And if we look in 3D, turn around to the back, look at that. It changed the color and the pattern. So let's try to be a little bit similar to our south elevation. It looks like they did lap siding on the edges, and then they did board and batten on this side. We probably won't have board and batten. We're going to have to make that material. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So let's go to our main floor. Let's just copy around this wall to all the other exterior walls. So I'm just going to use the copy properties, and I'm just going to, so I'm going to click there to match that. I filled my paintbrush, and now I'm going to click around the rest of the building. Even on the inside here. Okay, so now if I look in 3D, our whole building is in siding, lap siding. So we want the front though, these front pop-outs, we want them to be board and batten. So let's talk about that. First, let's talk about materials before we do that. Do you see how the exterior siding is not only gray, but it has this hatch pattern associated with it? How do you control that? So that's a material. When we set the layers, do you remember we picked materials and it opened that material dialog box? Let's go in and let's edit the materials. So if we go up to our ribbon, what you're going to look for is you're going to look for the tab that says Manage. And if you click that, down at the end, there's a little ball with like checker pattern on it. That's the materials library. So if you click the materials panel, this shows you all of the materials that are in your current project. And again, it depends on what's in your template. But since we started with the default template, yours should look like mine. And so what we're going to find is we're going to find the siding that we used. If you remember, we selected siding clapboard. So if you highlight that, it's going to show you all of the settings for that material. And there's a lot. And we're not going to worry about any tab except for the graphics tab today. And really in this course, you only need to worry about the graphics tab. The identity tab you rarely ever use, and the physical and thermal I also rarely ever use. The two that I use the most are the graphics and appearance. Appearance is if you want to get it to look realistic in real life if you do a rendering. A rendering is a whole different topic. It takes a ton of time and it takes a lot of skill to do right. So we're not going to worry about it. So you don't really, if you're not going to render the project, then you don't need to worry about the appearance settings. What you do want to worry about are the graphic settings because those will show up in your drawing. So the graphic settings is what's controlling how the material looks in 3D views. It controls how it looks in elevation views, the pattern. So it controls the color, the pattern, and then when you cut it open, it controls the hatch pattern for when it's cut. So there's what's called the surface pattern and then the cut pattern. So you'll see here's the color that it's using. Here's the surface pattern. So this is the pattern you're seeing when you look in elevation. And then this is what you're going to see when it's cut in floor plan. You see this cross hatch. So what we're mostly concerned about is if you want to play around with the cut pattern, you can. We're mostly concerned about what it looks like on the surface and what color it is. So for now, I kind of like the 6-inch parallel pattern, so we won't worry about that yet. We'll change that when we go to make the board and batten pattern. For now, what I really don't like is the dark color. So let's pick something else. Right now, by default, this box is checked and it's using whatever color it looks like when you render it. It's trying to make that same color in the graphics. I'm going to uncheck that box so that I can change the color to whatever color I want. So if you just click here on this little color area, it'll bring up this panel and you can literally pick any color you want. So let's say we want this to be like a, I don't know, a cream color. You could drag and find cream. Sometimes it's hard to make your own colors. So the other thing that it has here is you can click color books. And these are all the Pantone colors. I don't know if you're familiar with Pantone or not, but it's just a standardized set of colors. You can scroll down and kind of find the range that you're looking for. So if we wanted to be in like the cream section, that's kind of here at the top. Let's pick this kind of creamy color. Click OK. And now do you see how it changes there? Now we've actually changed the color of that material, and we can click OK, and it'll close out of the materials library, and now it just changed the material color. Okay, cool. So now what we want to do is these pop-outs, we want to change them to board and batten. So let's click on that wall, and we're going to edit the type again, and we're going to copy this wall because now we want to change it slightly. So let's duplicate it, and it'll be exterior wall with, instead of lap siding, let's say board and batten siding. And then let's take the 2 off that Revit automatically adds to the end when we duplicate things. Click OK. So now we're editing a different type now. The thing is, if you forget to duplicate it and you make changes, it's going to change the existing walls that you don't want to change. That's why we duplicate it. So now that we've duplicated it, now we can edit the structure. And we can come in here, and right now we've got siding clapboard. Now we want to change the material so that it looks different. So let's click here, and it'll reopen that tab or that materials dialog box that we were already editing. So what we want to do is we basically want to take the same siding, and we just want to change its material, like its graphic appearance a little bit. So again, if you try to change it right now, it's going to change that material everywhere we assigned it, which isn't what we want. We want to duplicate this before we change it. So if you right click on the material, it'll say duplicate material and assets. Let's do that. And now you can see it's got siding, and instead of clapboard, let's just say board and batten. So now we're duplicating the material. So highlight siding, board and batten. And now we could even give it a different color. Let's make this a little bit of a gray tone. Okay, so now it's grayish. And now we want the pattern to be different. So let's come over here, and you can change the color of the lines. We'll probably keep them black, but let's click in the pattern, and now it brings up yet another dialog box. I know it's a lot of dialog boxes. These are all of there's 2 types of patterns. There's drafting patterns and model patterns. Model patterns are real world dimensions. Drafting patterns scale with the size of the sheet. So you don't want to pick a drafting pattern for this case, because we want the lines to be the actual size of the board and battens. So what's hard about patterns is you're kind of stuck with whatever's in the template. If you work for a large company, they'll probably have many, many hatch patterns. In this template, there's not a whole lot of hatch patterns. So I don't see any that are board and batten. And to make a board and batten is complicated because it's the lines are not regularly spaced. There's like a wide gap, and then there's a small gap for the batten. So there's the panel, then the batten, and then another panel. And you can't make that in Revit. You have to use another program to make hatch patterns. So what you can do is you can go find patterns on the internet and load them in, or you just can make your own simple pattern. And so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to make a basic pattern. So what you're going to do is right now, you see the 6-inch parallel. We're going to come down here, and there's a little, it looks like a piece of paper with a star on it. It says new fill pattern. We're going to click that. And this is how you make a new pattern, but only simple patterns. If you went online and you found a pattern file, this is where you could download. You would hit custom, and then you could browse and you could load in the pattern that you want. But since we aren't going to do that, we're just going to make a basic pattern. So you'll click it back to basic, and we're going to name it, we'll just name it 6-inch vertical lines. Okay. And now down here, you have the basic settings. So we do want parallel lines, or you can do a crosshatch and it adds perpendicular lines, but we want parallel lines. And then we don't want it to be angled, I don't think. Oh no, we do. So 0 degrees puts it horizontal. So that means we want it 90 degrees. So we want it running up and down. And then you can pick how far apart the lines are. So we said they were going to be 6 inches, so we'll type in 6 inches. And now it'll draw the line 6 inches apart. Now we're going to click OK. And now you can see it made the new pattern. So now we want to select our new pattern that we made and click OK. And now it'll add that pattern to our material. Once we're done with our material, we can click OK, and it'll add the material to our wall. So that was a lot of steps. But essentially what we were doing was creating a new material, creating a new pattern, and then assigning it to the new material. And then now we're assigning the new material back down to our new wall that we were creating. So we were creating a lot of things all at once. Okay, so now we're done creating our wall. We'll click OK, and we'll click OK again. And now you can see that wall has changed colors and pattern. Now we want to copy that, so we'll go to the Modify tab and the Match Properties command, and I guess we'll save our project. Okay, so we pick the wall to fill our brush, and then we copy that around to all the places we want. So now if we look at our front elevation, which is south, you can see we're starting, it doesn't look as nice as the board and batten, but that's the best we can do with our basic. For the skill set we're going to learn in this class, this is about as close as we're going to get it. Now, if you go into 3D, it's up to you if you want to do this pop out. I'm going to say yes. Let's match this. We can use the match command. So now the pop outs are board and batten, and the rest is that horizontal pattern. All right. So I know that was a lot, but that is how you edit walls. That's a real in-depth look at editing your walls.